Hello, hola, good morning, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's inService podcast. I'm really excited about today's topic, which is building a culture for effective decision making. And we have Adam Gloss, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Impel, joining us today to have a very candid conversation around this. Hello, Adam. We'll get to introducing you in just a second. Before we do, as doing some housekeeping for our audience, we like you to be a participating audience. If you have comments, questions, agree, disagree, you can include those in the comments on LinkedIn, and we'll do our best to address them either during the conversation or as part of a follow up. This conversation will also be recorded, so you'll be able to come back and share it with friends, with your peers. Available in every platform that you listen to the podcast, as well as our social media and website. And and so, leaving that behind us, I mentioned that I really wanted to have this conversation and be the one to get a chance to talk with Adam, because as we get into the whole theme of connecting the humanity and technology, and how to find balance, how to find value out of that relationship, we have often come at that problem from a technology first perspective, and then seeing how does the individual fit into that conversation, how does technology impact that behavior. And today I want to look at it from the other angle, as our anchor, as our starting point, which is how to build that foundation that is people first, and the human element, and understanding what is the role that technology plays within that. So it's still the same conversation. We're just starting to tackle it from a different perspective. And why is it relevant, other than my personal preferences? Well, we see that there's more change, there's more uncertainty with every passing day, and that creates stress. That change is not going to address itself. And the question is, how do we balance all the disruptions and all the possibilities that are being put in front of service leaders with the aspect of managing people and motivating them and keeping them engaged and appreciating their values and their own motivations, so that we can get to a happy outcome at the other end of this. So without further ado, let me formally introduce Adam. I've had the pleasure of connecting with you before, have met you face to face in one of our service journey days as well. But some of our audience may not be as familiar with you, so would love to hear you share a little bit about your background and what is it that you currently do.
Thank you, Arno. Very, very happy to be here. So I am the Chief Operating Officer for a company called Impel. I have spent the last 20 plus years working in and around the industry that I'm in. So that's in kind of mechanical, electrical, service world, right? Installed systems, and a good part of that leading service organizations. I've worked in very large companies, Fortune 50, global companies, and all the way down to, frankly, owning my own business for a period of time as a small business owner, which is a very different challenge, and really everything in between. Currently, I said I'm one of the C-suite leaders at Impel. We are a relatively young company, so about 2.5 years old, and we are private equity backed and are conglomerating companies in the flow management space. So think large movements of fluids or semi-fluid through pump, valve, motor systems with some level of controls, and taking a little bit different approach. We are not assimilating these companies that we buy. We're not making them all Impel. We keep the brand, we keep local leadership, we keep local culture, we keep local relationships, local decision making, and then try to find leverage and find ways to bring a more holistic solution to customers. We're taking a very fragmented industry where these companies may have been doing pumps or motors or controls for decades, and thinking about how we actually bring all of that together into an engineered approach and a solution oriented approach for our customers. And that ranges for everything from municipal water and wastewater systems to large-scale high-tech industrial manufacturing, oil and gas, energy, like hydroelectric, agriculture, food processing. There's very, very little, by the way, in anybody who's watching this in your world that we don't touch at some level. If you eat it, drink it, use it to drive your car, whatever it is, we probably had a hand in it somewhere. That's what we do.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And so you've had quite the trajectory. And as you were talking about what your current role in the company looks like, one of the things that I'm curious about is one of the building blocks that Service Council is founded on, which is this commonality of challenges that we see across industries, across service leaders. But at the same time, there's some nuance that often is important to understand and see where do you need to adapt, where you have to learn something new as you're touching multiple elements as you go out. So could you share perhaps some of the key lessons from your past life that you've been able to apply in this new context? So let's start there.
Yeah, like I said, I come from some sizable companies. And the company that I'm in is not small, but we're not deep into the billions of revenue that some of the others I've been in. Because I came from organizations that were established, that were legacy organizations, there were structures that existed, and I may have been running a division in that business or a sizable division in that business, but you are still having to figure out how to navigate the politics of those organizations. You're figuring out how to navigate through the silos of those organizations. How do you achieve the vision and mission that you have for the organization that you're running inside that company within the constraints of whatever it is? And the challenges that I have now are very, very different, but the lessons learned in terms of thinking about your cross-business partners as partners, thinking about how you work towards the betterment of your customers, your people, and the company together has always really served me really well. And I think if there's something that I'm carrying forward into this new organization, it is partly that in a very different way. It's applied very differently with, frankly, legacy owners who we bring in as partners into this new company. And again, with the idea that we were trying to keep local decision making, local culture in place, right? So it's not as top down as what I've experienced before. It's much more matrixed, but that need to kind of exhibit leadership in a way of creating partnership. As a thought partner, as a resource, creating alignment, that's served me well in the past, and it's serving me well now.
Yeah, and that reminded me. So last year we have every other month these service journey days where we get together at an operation at one of our members and get 40-50 service executives problem solving around the topic. And one that we had last year at the Coca-Cola company was around governance and how to get enough of it to control the operation, but at the same time, as you pointed out, not to kill innovation. And as a tagline, that sounds great. But then you start going, peeling the onion, if you will. And one of the pain points that we've heard, unfortunately, more and more often is the lack of process clarity as you're trying to achieve that governance. Happens at the different layers. Our voice of the field service engineer, voice of the contact center agent, this is the second biggest point of friction in both of them for their day-to-day operations. So where I'd like to pick your brain a little bit more is, how do you manage the communication, especially in the context that you're talking about, where there's acquisitions, there's legacy owners? How do you manage the communication, the governance across these teams to try to get to a point where there's more clarity around the processes, where there's more compliance? Is it about prescribing? Is it about adopting? Any examples that you can provide along those lines?
Yeah, there's lots of examples. You pointed out a very real problem in every organization. Big, small, doesn't matter. And actually, the bigger you get, I think the more challenging this becomes. The more you move away from being able to touch everybody in an organization, the more this becomes an issue. I will say that we are very careful about what we prescribe. There are very few people who like being told what to do, right? um, uh, and it is much easier when people feel that they have a choice, when people feel that they have a say in how things work. The buy-in becomes significant, and for me, and the place where I tend to start with, and the place where I found that creates some success, is really understanding, why does this matter? What is the outcome you're trying to get to, right? So that's the first thing, and why is it important? And it's critical that you communicate that. It's not enough to tell people you shall. It's you shall because, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here's why this matters. And people may not like it at that point, but at least they have an understanding of it at that point. So if you're going to prescribe, the why becomes critical. But if you start with the outcome, like what is it we're trying to get to, you may find that you don't always need to prescribe, right? How and if you involve people, like it's really just very, very basic change management tool set. If you involve the people who are actually doing the work in figuring out how to get to that outcome, and they're the ones that help you develop the answer to that, you tend to get a lot less objection. You tend to get more compliance. You tend to get people actually bought into the solution using whatever process it is that you've determined. We're going through this right now with something very, very basic, a delegation of authority, right? So we are taking people who have owned and run businesses for decades, but maybe the business they were running was $10 million or 20 or 30 or $50 million, right? And they could talk to all their salespeople and all their field managers and all of their shop managers and their production managers and everybody else, and they could be out with their team members and understand what was going on. They were talking to all their customers all the time, right? You can run a business like that through heavy involvement and through field. All right, well, you put 12 of those together, and all of a sudden you're a $300 million business, and you're growing to be a $500 million business or a $750 million business, which is the trajectory that we're on. And you can't touch all those people anymore. And by the way, you now become a bigger target, and there's higher levels of risk. And right, so delegation of authority, what can people accept risk for, becomes a lot more important. So we had this conversation actually just 2 days ago with our leadership team. Okay, we have a delegation of authority matrix that we put out, and it was rolled out actually before I got here, but it was rolled out as a mandate. It was prescribed, and we found we got very, very low adoption on it. Right? People are used to making decisions on their own, and they just kept making them, and they're signing contracts and creating obligations that, frankly, they no longer have the authority to do. But instead of saying, wagging a finger and going, okay, you've been bad, you need to start behaving, it was, well, why is this a challenge, was the question that I asked. What about this process is creating a challenge for you? Where do you think it's reasonable? Understanding what the outcome is, right? We're all invested in this business together. None of us want to put this business at risk, right? And we are now a bigger target. There are going to be more people that come after us. There's going to be more liability, and there's more impact from that. And we got some really good answers from them and some really critical feedback about some parts of our delegation of authority that we actually need to go back and relook at. But a great example of involving people, if we understand what the outcome is, we understand why it's important, and we involve them in helping us to craft a solution, ultimately we come back with, they may not agree with entirely, but they'll at least feel like they had a voice and that they'll understand it. And I expect compliance to improve. But if not, I at least have an ability to create accountability.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You got to say what you thought. We took your opinion into consideration. You agreed to this, or at least are aligned to it. Now I can create accountability to make sure that it's enforced. So I think giving some thought to that. What's the outcome? What's the why? And then how do you get people bought into it? And then being really careful. The only thing that we've actually prescribed at this point that I don't see we would do any differently. We just launched a new ERP system and a new CRM system. Everyone has to use those. No choice. You have to use it. And we can talk maybe a little bit more about that in depth later. But we did involve them in developing it, in fleshing out how it was going to be used based on the outcomes we were trying to achieve. And we've seen fairly good compliance and uptake on it so far. Still a journey, like it's not perfect, but better.
Yeah, no, that does make a lot of sense. And as you were talking about this delegation of authority and how they get involved, it's really the foundations of a culture, right? And if we take a step back and think, why do we want to create that culture? It's, you want to provide direction, you want to achieve consistency in how do you go around innovation, adaptation, all of that good stuff. And you also brought up the business side of it. So perhaps building on this adoption of technologies, the interoperability that has to come with that, and I want to pull a little bit more on that thread of the ERP implementations that you have going on. So what else have you learned about this balance of achieving growth while honoring culture as you're going through all this friction?
I think culture is foundational. There is, you can have a business without culture. You can have culture that is empty, right? They're words on a poster on a wall or on the back of a business card, but really aren't lived. But if you really are intentional about defining your culture and evangelizing that culture, you enable decision making at the front lines. You guide behavior. You eliminate, frankly, people joining the organization who are not a good cultural fit to that organization, right? You reduce friction along the way and issues and problems. We just launched Vision, Mission, and Values, and are in the process actually of evangelizing that out to our people, and have been amazed at the reception that it's gotten, at how connected people are to it because they can see themselves in it, but they also see it as a guide, a North Star for how they work with each other, how they work with our customers, understanding what the expectations of them are inside the organization, and understanding what they can expect from the organization, right? It is a bit of a contract between all of us, right? Here's the behavior that we expect. Here's the behavior you should expect. Here's how everyone should be treated and how we should work. And when you do that, if part of that is around, like, we are very innovative, but innovation is not one of the values that we highlighted, right? But entrepreneurial spirit is, right? We are built on a group of entrepreneurs who started their own businesses, and we don't want to lose that. We want that flexibility. We want the creativity. We want the innovation. We want the resilience that entrepreneurs have of working through difficult situations. But what we want to do is layer professionalism and data on top of those things and help enable better decision making and better service to our customers and better results for the company and for the people who are in it. If you use culture as the North Star, all your decisions are framed by it. And it makes things much, much simpler. So even something like an ERP implementation, we really started with not just, well, we need the data for accounting and for financial reporting, and so we can actually get through our audit and like all the things we actually have to do, right? There's a reason you have an ERP system. It was also so that, hey, we actually need to get better data around how we're doing our work and where there are issues or problems, or where there's actually great work being done that we can then think about how we share best practices around, or thinking about the value of our customers and being able to really highlight where those most valuable relationships are, and understanding why those are, right? So it gets back to that, hey, we want you to be entrepreneurial, right? And we want a customer solution focused business, which is part of our value system as well. Let's have a tool that enables us to actually all do that effectively. Because again, like I said, we can't now touch all of our customers all the time, or all of our employees all the time. We're at a scale where that just isn't possible, and growing quickly. I don't know if that answered the question well enough, but hopefully gave you what you're looking for.
It did, and it triggered a couple of other ideas. So values and the mission and vision. Sometimes to me it feels like a box that is always checked, but it's a mistake if we think of it as a check in the box activity. And there was an article that I found the position it had very interesting, because it said your values, your statement of values can actually be destructive. And I had the quote over here because it caught my eye. It said, empty value statements create cynical and dispirited employees and undermine managerial credibility. And that's the thing. When you don't take it seriously, when you don't close the loop on, hey, these are our values, and then I connect it to why I'm asking something, to the incentives that I'm creating, to the where am I focusing the effort and the attention, and what is driving the decision making, then those values are actually going to be a deterrent to many of the challenges that we hear from service leaders, which are, how do I attract the right talent? How do I retain the right talent? How do I demonstrate career development opportunities? So this value of having the value statements, if you will, it is definitely a critical point, and translating that into the way in which decisions are made. I see that being a place where often there's a gap. I also read, I don't recall where, this was some time ago, that in straightforward situations, values are an easy sell. But a more interesting application was when you're in a gray area, representing a statement of values as, on this scenario, which is complex, does not have a straightforward answer, because of our values, we would like you to make this choice. And now you have a reference point. And in a situation that is tough, that is hard. And I don't know if you've come across situations like that. Probably, I'm pretty sure actually you have. I don't know if one will come to mind.
There's a lot to unpack there. I want to start with the first thing you said, which is talking about empty values. And very, very personally, I worked for a Fortune 50 company at one point. And one of the values that attracted me to that organization was innovation. And I found that there at some level. And the other one was integrity. And while I was there, and people first was another one that was really important to me. So of those three, like innovation and integrity and people first, were the three values that really did attract me to the company. I said innovation I found to some extent. Integrity was a challenge there. I was expected to have it, but at the same time, the CEO had 2 federal investigations going on over him personally, and his behaviors and actions and some questionable activities. And it was really hard to hold myself to that standard and say, okay, if I'm expected to behave in a way that exemplifies integrity and our CEO does not, what does that say about the organization, right? And when it came to the people first part, it was a public company, but I went through at least twice a year having to implement reductions in force and laying people off where it was just a blanket, hey, 10% of the workforce is being laid off. Everyone pick your 10%. And I was actually in a turnaround inside that company in an organization and it made it incredibly lean and really did not have any ability to cut people and still meet the plans that we had had. And it really did not sit well with me. I actually left the organization just out of frustration, right? That the values I was looking for weren't there. I ended up at a privately held company where I was previously at McKinstry, and the values were what brought me there. But the difference was I found that they walked the talk, that when they said people first, they meant it. Now, it did not mean that they tolerated poor performance or that they tolerated people not aligning to their values or not making the right decisions. Like there was accountability. But when they talked about innovation, when they talked about people first, when they talked about integrity, it was there. You could see it. And I think we're trying to do the same thing here at Impel, where when we released these values to our people and started promoting them, we asked them, show us what you're doing in your day and how you are living these and how they influence your decision. We didn't tell them, here's what we expect you to do. We said, hey, here's the things that we think are most important. Here's the values. Here's a brief understanding of what they are. Now you think about how to apply them to what you do. And by the way, you should see me and our CEO and everybody else in the organization exemplifying these as well, right? We need to live them as much as everybody else. But if you bring it down to that decision-making level and you make it part of that basis that people use for their jobs every day, it becomes real. If you use it as part of how you evaluate performance, it becomes real. If you talk about it all the time, it becomes real. But you have to walk the talk. You can't be hypocritical about it, right? So I think that's the first part of it. And maybe as an example of that, everybody on this call, I'm assuming, is going through the same thing that we are, where the back and forth on tariffs and federal grant reviews and funding and government changes are creating a lot of uncertainty. We are living that just like everybody else is. Our response to that has been to lean into our values and to think about teamwork and to think about how we support each other. It's to lean into our values and to think about entrepreneurialism and how do we create a solution out of a problem. Hey, here's these problem sets that are coming, and our customers are dealing with the same thing, by the way. How do we meet them where they live and bring solutions to them? How do we as entrepreneurs inside of our company double down on our efforts and rethink what we're doing? It's not enough to say, well, this is what we do and we can't keep doing it, and right? Like, no, like if it's your business and you really have ownership of it, you've got to treat it differently. And we are meeting our customers where they live. We are refocusing actually on different ways we can help them through some of the economic uncertainty that's going on. I don't want to get into too many specifics. We don't have a whole lot of time for this, but it may come up in questions, or I can do follow up to this. But part of that, frankly, is that we know that projects that are going on and new equipment installation is going to be either delayed or canceled. And we're going to need to lean more into service. And we're looking at how do we actually bolster our service organization? How do we drive more attachment rate when we do have sales? How do we think about extending life of equipment, increasing reliability of equipment, and offering that in a different kind of way? But it's that flexibility in that we find in those values that's driving this. We're framing all of our communication around our value set, and we're showing people this is how we are walking the talk.
Yep. And just to build on that, one area that I'd like to get your quick take on is the bridge between having this people engaged and building the credibility and actually achieving the growth that we were talking about before might be this professionalism. And it's also a part of that is how do you take advantage of the tools, the technology, the data that is there. We've seen the pain point where the frontline, those that are trying to use this, say 1 in 4 actually complain that the user interface changes too quickly, that the processes that they have to follow in the tools are changing too frequently. So any lessons that you can share on how you're trying to see the incidence, the impact of these activities? How do you empower the people to get the full extent of the potential of the tools to use them more effectively as they were intended?
The success I've had with this, and I think this is both here at Impel and prior at McKinstry, was not siloing technology outside of the business. It's bringing them together. That technology is there to serve the business and as a partner to the business. So if in a large organization like McKinstry was, I partnered with our business technology group and made them part of my business planning. They understood where we were going, what we were trying to achieve, and their work was to align tool set to the outcomes we were trying to get to. We're doing the same thing here, right? So we've got somebody actually that reports to me. I'm fortunate in that right now, who runs the technology stack. But it is all focused on the outcome that the business is trying to get to. It's not technology for technology's sake. I think the second thing is when you think about integration of those, your subject matter experts, your SMEs, become really, really critical. So if we're right now just launched an ERP, and we're trying to take 12 different companies that are using 12 different systems and bring them all into one. It's not an easy thing. By the way, no one's going to be 100% happy. So you got to start there. Like expectations, keep them manageable, right? Or reasonable. But every single one of those businesses is having input into the interface, into the tool setup, into what they need to see to make it work right. Not the idea that it needs to work the way their old system worked. Like that was one of the first things. Like, hey, it will not work the way your old system did. Here's the way the new tool works, but what is it you need from it? And then you're going to have a hand in helping to design how it works, right? So get back to one of the first things we talked about, and that idea of change, that if you involve the people who are most affected by it and you get their input and buy-in, you tend to have the least resistance and the most compliance. I will say it's still not perfect, right? There's no way to make everyone 100% happy. But especially in this case where something is prescriptive, you must use this, it's at our own peril if we don't get their involvement in designing it. And I've been in companies where that was not the case, right? And sometimes you get large enough, and I understand that, right? If you've got a couple 100,000 employees, you certainly can't involve 500 of them in making a choice about a business product. But how do you get enough representation where you can go, no, we actually did consider that, and here was the voice in the room that talked about this, and getting them to champion that back out again. And I think that is the important piece of it, as opposed to someone who thinks they understand what the front line's doing, making decisions. You actually need the front line helping you to make the decisions. That's been the key to success with any implementation like that.
Yeah, no, that's very insightful. I'm sure people are taking notes on this. Ben, one thing that I don't want to let you go without asking this, because you've been a leader in the industry across companies for so long. You've helped leaders go up the ladder, I'm sure. And we've talked a lot about what the leaders need to do to the culture and to their teams. But what is the advice that you would tell leaders to do about themselves, or to think about themselves based on what you've learned along the way?
So I'll say leading is lonely. You don't get to vent out. You might get to vent up, and depending how high you get, that gets a little more rarefied air. I think it is incredibly important to think about self-care. How do you keep your own stability, mental health, draw boundaries, recharge, refresh, take care of yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually? All that's really important. I think the other thing is really clearly understanding that as a leader, you are in the position you are in because you are different. That I give this advice to everybody that I promote newly into a management role, or is new coming into a leadership role. That one of the most frustrating experiences you can have is when you have expectations of something and the reality fails to come close to those expectations, right? That's the root of frustration. And with people, it's typically that new leaders think that other people are going to be like them, right? I did that role. You're doing that role. You must be like me. Well, no, the reason that you are now leading or managing is because you had more capability, or you were more motivated, or you were harder working, or you were more dedicated, or all of the above. And to expect others to have that same level of dedication or focus or capability is a recipe for disaster, for them and for you, right? You're going to be banging your head against a wall. Why don't people listen to me? Why can't they just do what I like? All right, you're not getting it. It really is about understanding that you need to meet people at their level. You as a leader need to be that chameleon for others, and change your approach, change your expectations. You still need to hold them accountable to a baseline expectation for a role or for an organization, especially around values. But it needs to be modified. And then for yourself, it really is about making time. I'm very fond of saying you will never find time for anything. Like, there's way too many demands, especially now on our lives. It's not gotten any easier in the last 20 years. It's gotten progressively, probably geometrically harder. So making time. Like, if I look at my calendar, I will tell you that it's blocked out next Thursday. I will be on a mountain somewhere, and my cell phone will not have reception. And that is how I take care of myself. Like, I need to disconnect. I need to get out into nature. I need to really understand how small some of my problems are in relation to the natural world around me. And I come down off of those days with a whole lot better perspective on life in general. Also physically exhausted, which and it makes me keep myself relatively healthy, but I force myself to find the time to do that, to make the time. You're never going to find it. I have to make it. And everyone's different, right? Maybe it's reading, maybe it's time with your family, maybe it's boating, maybe it's, God forbid, it's golf. There's going to be some real thumbs down over that comment. Whatever it is, right? But everyone needs that space in their lives. And I think we can let work become too consuming. There's an immediacy to everything anymore, and a sense of connection to everything anymore. You're almost never disconnected unless you intentionally become disconnected. You have to make that happen. So I'd encourage everybody, and encourage your employees to do the same thing. Find some boundaries, right? And keep them.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's great advice. And just to supplement, I would equate what you were describing to we don't, when the customer doesn't see value out of what we're doing, we don't say, it's the customer's fault that they don't get the value proposition. We usually try to rethink the value proposition and how we communicate it. And that's when we think about creating a culture and driving that experience for our own teams. I believe we should take a similar approach. You
Yeah.
talked about that, understanding, listening, engaging, in order to not just react, but to be in a position to shape that experience, to continue innovating, to take it to the place that the business requires, for it to allow for that growth and keeping up with the times. So I really like that.
It's a fantastic analogy,
Last
by
thing.
the way.
Oh,
Love that analogy.
thank you. Glad to contribute a little bit to the podcast. But so the last thing you honestly shared so much, and I appreciate that candor. Um, Before we part, can you share a little bit about Adam, about yourself? You've been serving in our advisory board for some time, so perhaps a little bit of the value that you've gotten out of that, the reasons. And you talked about your weekend. So anything else that you want to leave the audience with about some passion project of yours, perhaps?
Sure. So very, very happy to actually be on the advisory council for Service Council. I think you mentioned at the outset that we all have many of the same problems, maybe applied a little bit differently or showing up a little bit differently, somehow exhibiting differently, but all of us are dealing with labor shortages. All of us are dealing with, some kind of technology debt or technology issues. All of us are dealing with the pace of change. All of us are dealing with some economic issues like I talked about. And I think that there is a benefit to an organization like Service Council that creates a brain trust and lets people talk through those things in a very open way. The relationships that I've built, the tribe that I have is incredibly valuable to me, and it comes through organizations like this and my involvement with them. There's also, I think, what really separates Service Council, frankly, is a lot of the research that you're doing and making it kind of data based, and really helping to guide decisions that way. So that's very much appreciated. For me, the big thing I have coming up is actually the end of summer. I tend to do like one really big thing at the end of summer every year. Last year, I hiked rim to rim at the Grand Canyon, and I made the mistake of doing that in August, and the heat was unbearable. People die doing that, and I don't want to tell you how close I came actually to heat exhaustion. This year, I will be hiking the Dolomites for 5 days. So I'll spend my summer up on mountains and doing big hikes just to get myself ready for that. I'm not as young as I used to be. I don't recover as well as I used to. So I need to be more intentional. And I'm starting to scale back some of my things that I do, maybe not quite as big as I used to do. But yeah, still getting out. And then everyone can maybe pity me a little bit. I'm actually doing a home remodel right now and living through that. So my goal is to keep my marriage intact through that process, and my sanity intact, because we're living in our house as it's being done. So maybe a glutton for punishment. Maybe that's the tagline for Adam. That's a bit about me.
That's great. That's a great way to end. I'll be rooting for you on all those things, the hiking and the the stability in the home front. I can relate to that. So thank you again, Adam. This has been a great and fun session. To our audience, a reminder, today's podcast was recorded. It will be available across the different platforms. Looking forward to see you in our next episode as we continue to pick our experts' minds and experiences. Thank you, everybody. Have a great